So in this video, I want to talk about the LED conspiracy theory. How we went from really terrible quality lights, kind of starting around 2008, and I'm sure depending on what country you lived in, probably a bit earlier, maybe a bit later. But we went from flickering, crazy, high amounts of blue light to somewhat better LEDs that are now tolerable, but they're still eye damaging, and just almost nothing is being said about it. Let's get into it. So my introduction to LEDs was probably about 2008. I remember using a laptop, and I'm pretty sure I lasted like 1 minute and my eyes felt like death. I had no idea what the heck was going on. And then by about, I don't know, like 2009, 10, they kind of started becoming commonplace a little more where I lived. But thank God, none of the places that I had worked at yet were really starting to use them, but they were starting to appear in the street lights slowly. And I believe it was around, it still took a couple more years, but all the screens were starting to change, and I could not use a laptop or a computer screen to save my life, because the first, whatever you want to say, introduction or batch, somebody could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it starts around 2005, but it's screens back then were powered by compact fluorescent called CCFL, and those didn't have near the blue light or near the flicker that, not even close to the flicker that CRTs had, because I know a lot of people complain about the flicker of CRTs, but that has nothing on LED flicker. Man, is that insane. So fast forward to about 2014, things start, for me, they start getting a little crazy. I cannot tolerate these things. Like, usually with being like in a minute of being under an LED or around an LED, I just start feeling sick. Migraine, eye pain, eyes dry out, my eyes go bloodshot red, like almost immediately. So I've been kind of following this LED story, and lucky for me, as I got older, probably happened about 3 years ago now. It was about right near like the midway through when I was like 39 years old. I don't know, my brain changed or my eyes got incredibly dim. Like, it was harder for me. Bright light didn't affect me as much. But there's also something else going on. The quality of the lights has slowly been increasing. And I happened to be in the store today, and I was actually kind of shocked to see this. And so I can give you about like 5 years ago, I used to go into the stores, and I'd go, and they had mostly changed all the lights to LED by this point, and I used to follow them because I wanted to see where we were going with this. And I'll see if I can share the article. It's actually more of a forum from Blurbusters, where he just goes into this crazy discussion, very in depth. It'll take you quite a while to read it, about like the quality differences between like the CRIs. Like the 80s were mostly what we've seen, but I could only imagine the ones from the early, like the mid 2000s and 2010, those were probably like CRI 70 or 75 or possibly lower. And if we look at the computer here, the lower the number, the worse the color looks, and it gets better as it goes up to a CRI 100. I am not aware of any LEDs that are even close to CRI 100. There might be a couple at 98 now, because I was actually shocked to find a bunch at CRI 95. The reason why I bought this, and we'll get into that, I do own, how many do I own? Probably over 1,000 incandescent light bulbs, because in Canada we were told they were going to be banned, and I need light in my life, and if I can't use LED lights, I'm in big trouble. So those guys I showed you up there were halogen. They will have a CRI of 100. For the longest time, we were running LEDs like this, and these guys were death to my eyes, like absolute death. And then it was funny, so I was excited to see this guy, because the CRI 90, I remember, I was probably going back 2 years ago, I started noticing a lot of the boxes were saying CRI 90. So I thought to myself, because I had bought a CRI 80 to see if I could tolerate it. I tried a bunch of different kinds. I actually think I still have them all. I had like 3 or 4 kinds of them. Couldn't tolerate them. Even the flicker-free kind, the high blue light, it just cuts through my eyes, makes me feel like crap. So I bought the 90 after that. I tried that. Same thing, felt like crap. And then I happened to be on a forum, and the one guy, and he says that, and I really think this makes sense. If you work in a computer job all day and you're sitting under LED lights all day, then you're staring at an LED light screen all day, and in most cases you're sitting under crappy LEDs, like it's just bad lighting. But there was this big discussion about the CRI 95s and nothing below, and so I wanted to try it, and I think that is my threshold. I'd like to revisit this video if anybody's interested down the road, but I won't be using them. Like I'm not a big fan of LED. I've been through hell with these guys. I really don't think that they're good for you. As you can see, I'm a collector of old technology because I don't have any issues with that, and I use plasma TVs and CRTs there. I do not like LED screens. The same kind of journey with the light bulb happens for me with the LED screen. It wasn't until these 2020 IPS panels came out where we crossed a threshold where it must have to do with the blue light getting just slightly under control. Because I'm not saying like I do pretty good with these guys. I don't want to knock this guy too much. This is an XG 270. But this is like the kind of the first time that I could really tolerate an LED screen for like long periods of time. I don't really have any issues with this guy, but it wasn't until these 2020 IPSs that we finally, for at least for me, turned the corner. I do prefer OLED, and I want to go that route because I perform way better with an OLED screen. But I find it funny how these companies they don't say anything, and then slowly, as time goes on, we're just fixing these things, but what are we doing here? Like you can't tell me these companies didn't know. I used to be part of a bunch of groups back in the early 2010s, and we used to write to them. Nobody would ever get a response. They would they wouldn't even acknowledge it. They would just deny it. But then when they finally start getting it under control, this is just an advertisement from the Samsung S10, which I believe is like, oh, when was that? I believe it was like one of the first times they acknowledged it. Maybe somebody could prove to me that they were acknowledging it before. But yeah, these companies now are starting to say that. They knew this back then. They all knew that these lights were bad. Because if they weren't bad, like this company here, why even fix it? Like if it wasn't bad, why did we go from CRI 75 to 95? Like these guys are just unbelievable. But yeah, I guess that's the conspiracy theory. We had super good technology, and they go, oh yeah, it's to save energy. It's good for the environment. It's not good for your health, especially if you're one of those people that gets crazy migraines or eye strain from it. Or it's like debilitating. You can barely work with these things. Now, it only probably affects a minor amount of people, but the amount of people that I have talked to, because there always seems to be a threshold for everybody, right? And for some people, they might need that 9,000 LED, like that 9,000 Kelvin, where it's so bright that it just destroys your eyes. It might be that for somebody. For me, it's like, generally speaking, like anything above like 3,200 Kelvin. I like the yellow, like warm lights. I don't like the blistering bright lights. Like it just drives me nuts. That's why I like my incandescent my tube TVs, because realistically you can crank these guys up to as full brightness as you want, and they don't get very bright. Like they're just always comfortable and warm to me. I don't know where I was going with this, but I guess I find it interesting that like it took like I guess we're at 17 years, and I get that technologies get better as time goes on, but I guess what irritates me is that these guys knew. And there was always so much information on the internet, even back in like 2008, and especially like as soon as we crossed like 2010, you can still Google to this day blue light and LEDs, and there's all these blue light blocking glasses and all this stuff. Here you can see a incandescent bulb there. Those are the ones I use all the time. But I find it funny, just radio silence. And then I used to have this other advertisement, I can't find it anymore, but it was right from the Samsung TVs where they were admitting that their old TVs cause, what was the wording? Something like cell death. to your eyes, and this new TV doesn't do that. So what, your past 15 years of LED TVs caused like retina cell death? Like, it's so wild to me. But this is good news though. Let's look at the positive of it. It's getting pretty cheap, but I was on Amazon and they can still be pretty expensive. Like, so I pulled up a pack there. This is very similar to the one I just bought, but they're still like 25 bucks for two. These just happen to be on sale in the one store I was at, and I got them for $10 for two, which honestly, you could still buy incandescents for way cheaper. And LEDs have been, I don't know, the advertising on them has been like quite irritating. Where they say they last 7, I don't know, when they first came out, they used to advertise like ridiculous numbers, like I forget what it was, like 100,000 or 200,000 hours, and none of that's true. And none of that had accounted for the weather or where you live. Like when they install the street lights, I guess if the weather changes, like if you live in Canada, and anybody who knows Canada can go from plus 30 to minus 30 depending on where you live, that's not good for LED lights, and that can shorten their lifespan very quickly, and especially over the season. So those things where they last, like whatever they were saying, 7 to 10 years, none of that's true. And we have enough data to see it. I've seen it with my work lights. I've seen it with the street lights, and yes, they can be pretty sketchy. But this is good news though, because at least, especially for the places, hopefully this is for other countries and stuff too, you want to get these higher quality lights. You want to try to get it as high as you can, low blue light and low flicker. If you have no choice but to buy LED lights, at least the future is looking bright. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day.